Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. So this is the December content meetup. It's the last one of the year, obviously. I'm delighted to say we've got a special guest, Michael Wignall, who's an SEO specialist and a long-term friend, who has offered to do a talk on SEO and GEO. So that's the sort of more specific side of things, but obviously it needs to be grounded in some context, and SEO is the context, and particularly looking at it for what this means for content designers. Um, it's a dense topic. I think, Michael, we can't cover everything, but we're going to set the scene a lot and then look at some particular use cases. And we'll see where that goes as well. So we'll have time for questions, etc. I think, Michael, you want to cover the whole session first, and then we'll do questions at the end. Is that right?
I think that'll be a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. But for those of you, if you want to drop questions in the chat, you can do that. I'll cover those at the end. But also, it's nice for people to kind of come off mic and just ask those questions directly. You are also welcome to do that. There is a hand up function in Zoom, which is under the React button. So if you click on the React button, which is a heart, and you should have an option to raise hand. So you can definitely do that. And we're going to start with a couple of questions to ground us. So this was just so Michael had a sense of like people's skills and experience in this area. Michael, can you see the results there as they come in?
Yeah, I've got them on screen. So
Yeah. Is that what you were expecting? So more
I
confidence and
didn't know what
knowledge
to
in.
expect. But yes, yeah, I think that's relatively typical of anyone who's running websites. Like,
Yeah. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So the next question is, have you encountered incorrect information about a council service from AI search tools? So that could be, from an LLM directly like ChatGPT, could be your website's chatbot if you've got that going, could be from Google AI summaries, that's come up quite a lot, or an other. It could be the council you're working with, it could be the council where you live. Those two things might be different, I guess. Um, So very much a majority saying yes, Michael, which again is kind of what we thought and is one of the drivers for putting this session on, isn't it? Um, Kate is asking for, could you have the link in the chat? Yes, Kate. There you go. Okay. So I'm going to go on, and then one more question. Um, in your council, has there been an expert SEO review of your council website in the last 5 years? So got a few options there. Yes, in the last year. Yes, more than a year ago. No, don't know. And this is broadly, I think, what we were expecting to see, Michael, wasn't it? Most people saying no or possibly don't know, just maybe they haven't been here that long.
yeah, absolutely.
But interesting that there have been a couple in the last year and four in the last 5 years, but more than a year ago. Okay. Anything you want to comment on that, Michael, or do you want to get going?
No, no, let's crack on, shall we?
Yeah, we can crack on. So I'm going to stop sharing and then you're going to share your screen, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll do.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's stop.
I've got the obligatory um, Google Deck.
I can see
So
that.
thank you, welcome. Um, how to encourage AI platforms to give more accurate information to your residents is kind of what this is about. Um, just about me, I'm an SEO. I do other stuff as well. Content architecture, analytics, performance analysis are kind of related. But AEO, GEO, answer engine optimization or generative engine optimization is now part of the scope of AI work. My clients are commercial and third sector. I've worked with several councils. I think some of you here and I will have worked with. And I'm a member of DCR. We're an LGD certified supplier. So I, along with Tim and Aaron. So what I want to cover is some of the similarities and differences and overlap between SEO and GEO. Talk a little specifically about Google AI overview, because I've been told that's where people are finding quite a lot of problems. Explain a bit about how LLMs find their answers, because that's, I think, kind of key to this. Then technical optimization, by which I mean mainly like site-wide. Content optimization, obviously, we'll look at in a bit more detail because this is a content group. And then about actually how to track LLM performance for your site. And then wrap up and take questions. So this is based on how things are today. Now, they're unlikely to change massively, very quickly. All AI stuff is changing quite quickly. Hence my funny graphic. What are the similarities and differences between SEO and AEO? So, like, I'm not surprised most of you haven't had SEO reviews on the sites. SEO is not traditionally that important for council websites. If people are looking for core council information, then in search engines, they're not going to find it anywhere else. There's no point in optimizing around bins and council tax and so forth. Google's very, and Bing and the others are very good at serving local results and things that are relevant to you. Obviously, it's a lot more important for commercially competitive sites or microsites. So around fostering, for example, tourism, any other commercial services you might run. It's also now more important due to AEO, GEO, and hopefully it will become very clear why. In terms of AEO, the way we measure it is visibility. So how often does a site come up or some information from a site come up to answer a question? The share of voice, how often it's mentioned, citations, so how often you get links. That's kind of similar to search engine indexing and search results position and click through from there, but it's a different mechanism. I think there's quite a lot of panic around AEO. If a site or a page in particular is reasonably well optimized for search, it's going to be quite well optimized for the AEOs. Most of the LocalGov Drupal sites I've seen have really good content design, structure, etc., which means that you're starting from a really good base. It doesn't necessarily mean that an end user is going to get an accurate answer to a question rather than content. I should say that. So I'm not going to talk a lot about SEO, but how it works. Search crawlers, Googlebot, for example, will come to your site. It will try to crawl all the pages it's told it's allowed to crawl. It will follow every link. It will follow links even if they aren't on your site. It will find them from other websites, social media posts, etc. It will crawl, read, and index an entire page. Now, it might pass sections of that for rich snippets, which we'll talk about in a sec, which is something that's introduced in the last 2 or 3 years, where it'll just take a little bit of a page and provide it as an answer at the top of search results. But in general, it's looking at the whole page and the context of it, how the whole page fits together and within the site. And then whether to return that for someone's search query, do content match, It will look at some technical SEO signals, that's the optimization. And then it will think, oh, is this page an authority? It will look for, are people linking to it? What's the domain? What the social signals? What's the page quality? Is it stuffed with ads? What's its history for bounce rate? If I do provide this in the search results, do people stay on the site? How well does it match user intent? So, for example, if I search blue badge scheme, that's slightly different to looking for apply for blue badge, where it's really clear intent. And it will look at my location to see if this should be modified for local search. So what's my council tax? For example, it will try and figure out which council is local. Roughly, roughly speaking, that's how SEO works. SEO is changing a little bit. One of the things we're seeing because of chatbots is people are asking longer question type search queries. So instead of our learned behavior, particularly for those of us over 20, 25, we might search blue badge scheme and then go, okay, I know how to filter these results with my eyes and click on what I want. It's becoming increasingly common to have much longer question type queries. And that's something we're going to see more and more of over the next 2 or 3 years, which will impact SEO. But that's a bit detailed to get into here, I think. AEOs. So some of these LLMs still have dependency on search engine indexes. I'll go on to that in a sec. That's where the big overlap is. So in terms of optimization, there are similarities, but actually some of these LLMs are using the core Bing and Google search engine indexes as well. AEOs care more about relevance to the question than they do about what's on the page. So it's looking for a direct answer to a question, which might only be a paragraph long, even if the rest of the page to some extent isn't about that. It's not looking at topic-based things in that way, but only perhaps in a small section of a page. It's got a much higher level of intent matching. So it's trying to do the answer that the specific person using ChatGPT or Gemini wants as an answer. Now, the signals it uses for this are a little bit vague, but it means it's more audience specific. So again, as a content designer, thinking in terms of audiences and personas is even more important. It has different rules as to what is valid information to return, which is where we see incorrect information and it making stuff up because it can't find valid information. They capture new content faster than search indexes. Potentially, you could put something live and an hour later it's there as an answer. It doesn't happen that quickly. Minimum, you're looking at a day or two for search. And here's the nub. It's much more easily confused by a lack of clarity or conflicting information. That's when it starts mainly inventing answers. Or it can't decide between the level of authority between conflicting sources of information. And that will play into content curation on your sites in particular. I want to talk separately about Google AI Overview because it's not an LLM. It's this weird, bastardized halfway house between Google search and an LLM. So we're all familiar where it is here in search results. It's just another part of what Google calls enhanced search. So it used to be rich results and snippets, knowledge panels, local map packs. People also ask, and now we've got AI overviews. So it's passive. It's just an AI-powered summary of the results that have been returned for your query. It's not an interactive chat. It's not an LLM. Why do they even have this, right? This is it's a question because it's not very reliable. And it's because they make $200 billion pounds a year in advertising revenue from search results, mainly. So they want people still to be using search, but they know that their search is being cannibalized by people using search within chatbots. So they've come up with this thing. At the moment, it seems to be about 25% of all queries get one of these, and it's going to get more personalized to people, again, with intent signals. And it's going to start including paid ads because they're going to monetize it. So it's this kind of weird halfway house. It's a summary of the top few results, some, top 5, top 10 positions. It looks at those results, rewrites it using AI. So often it's very low quality answers, especially for complex questions, and it hallucinates and it sticks things together that aren't contextually relevant and just gets stuff wrong, right? How do you stop that happening? Well, first of all, you need to be in those top 5 or 10 positions. And then you need to make your content easier to pass by Gemini. So we'll look at this is content optimization. It's really bad at recognizing context, how recent content is. So it could be pulling something that it thinks is accurate, but from 2014, and authority. So one thing about council sites is your very high authority in terms of how search engines look at stuff. .gov domain, thousands, hundreds of thousands of incoming links, and recognized as an authority source by other websites. Google AI Overview ignores that. So you won't be in the top 5 or 10 positions probably without that authority, probably. But it's just putting stuff that could be nonsense. Also prioritizes certain types of content. So this is like, how do we make the content more passable or more likely to be used and used as the core of those responses? It likes video, it likes infographics, it likes visual step-by-steps, it likes images, and it likes easy to extract content. If we optimize for AI, for LLMs, that will work to a large extent for AI overview. But it's always going to be this slightly weird halfway house. It should improve. They should be able to engineer this so it starts recognizing authority more. And I'm sure they will, because everyone recognizes the results are so poor. So when an LLM gets asked a question, how does that work? So to begin with, it uses its training data, right, which mostly has a cutoff date for the bulk of it. That's the lowest cost of the LLM. It's the least power. It's the least cost to these bigger AI companies who are losing money hand over fist. What is unitary counsel? Something like, what is counsel? Answers that don't change. If it's something that's likely to have changed or it's a recent thing, it will conduct a web search. So it knows that its training data isn't up to snuff. Now that's slightly, it's not as set in concrete as it is, because on big sites and council sites are probably including this, and you'll be able to check. I'll show you how. You'll be getting these LLMs actually crawling your site and looking for content update for their own kind of index. But the kind of important thing where it affects SEO as well is if someone goes, who controls Kent Council today? Or what are the library opening hours this Christmas? It knows it doesn't know that information, so it will go and search the web for it. Does this in a different way to how search engines work, but it's going to try and retrieve that answer. So I won't go into this in detail because we don't have enough time, but they have different thresholds about when they go, okay, I'm going to go and do a search. Different levels of confidence, depends on the topic, depends exactly how you ask the question. Something like Perplexity will always use web search. Others are more, Claude's very reluctant. Mostly today, I'm going to talk about ChatGPT and Gemini. Um, so if it thinks it needs new information. So this is Gemini. It needs, right, I know I need fresh information. It's news, it's dates, it's market prices. I'm not confident that my model knows the answer. It's complex or specific, or it's very, the question asked is very, makes it obvious to the LLM that it needs to go and find something that's fresh and new, or at least check. So when it does this, it will rewrite the original question. So I could ask, what are the library opening times this Christmas? It will rewrite that possibly into several different questions and then do a web search. So it won't necessarily be looking at the same pages that you would if you just typed that question into a search engine. It's a bit black box. If you do this, if this is happening on ChatGPT, it will do its first web search through the Bing search index. It was using the API. It doesn't go and use the search box like we do. Gemini, unsurprisingly, uses Google Index API, mostly looking for titles, summaries, and snippets, which again you can affect it by how you structure your content. Google in AI mode, similar to Gemini, slightly different, but it also uses its Google Shopping and Knowledge Graph and all these other things as well, like local results and so forth. Perplexity is building its own index because it doesn't have access to this stuff, right? So it often gets blocked because it brings sites down. Perplexity crawler. It ignores robots text, which tells it what can and can't do, and it tries to crawl your faceted search, internal search, until the site falls over. So quite often you see site admins blocking Perplexity. I haven't used it that much. I know what Aaron does, so I can't tell how good it is at actually providing results. And then, okay, so it's found this bunch of sites. It will then send its own crawlers to look for specific answers on those pages of a bunch of web pages it's selected to look at. So say you've got multiple crawlers for each of these. Some of them are updating their training index. Some might be indexing your site. And the one we're looking at here is the real-time one. So our slightly this is what we've talked about before. So it's looking on the pages for specific questions. It's not really interested in everything around that on the page. They do to some extent weight content authority as well in deciding what to send back to the LLM, because this search will then send a bunch of information to the LLM, and the LLM will then provide its answer. It's a multi-step process. Because it searches these indexes in different ways to where we would, getting top positions on Google and Bing for specific questions doesn't mean the LLMs will even use those pages to extract the answers. Doesn't even mean necessarily they'll even look at them. So you need to do LLM specific optimization. Water, second. In terms of technical site optimization, like there's a massive overlap between AEO and SEO. You want a real clear site URL structure, like folder structure. You don't want loads of 403s and 404s and redirect chains and loops and all that kind of stuff that makes the site difficult to crawl and users find errors. Site speed is even more important because you imagine they're doing real-time searches while someone's waiting at the other end of ChatGPT for an answer. So it's looking through pages extremely quickly, and the faster the site is, that helps a great deal in terms of getting your information pulled back as an answer. You need to be checking how well your site is indexed. You check in Google Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools. Mainly Search Console. Webmaster Tools is worth checking every 6 months or a year, but like if there's issues, one or the other will pick it up. So any issues there will directly affect how well ChatGPT and Gemini are able to access and find the correct pages. But it also means these AI crawlers will be having problems as well. And there are things an SEO can do to make things better here. So this no name, no pack drill is a council site. This is a number of indexed pages. So it should roughly map to how many pages you've got in your sitemap. This is how many pages, 2.63 million, that Googlebot is trying to crawl because it hasn't been told not to, and there's links or whatever, and it can't. Or it's you know, sorry, it can, but it's not indexing those pages because they're garbage or they're duplicates or what have you. When you've got a problem like that, anything over about 100,000, or I mean, it varies, total pages, this means that all of the crawlers coming to this site are not finding updates, they're not finding new pages quickly enough, etc., which is severely harmful because you're not getting your freshest content to search and you're not getting it to the LLMs either. So I'm just going to show you, this is, for those of you who aren't familiar with Google Search Console, this is just a Search Console for LocalGov Drupal. It's a free Google tool. You've got a performance thing here, which is super useful, but you've also got indexing. So here, we've only got 366 unindexed pages and 174 that are. And the reasons, there's an alternate page with a canonical tag, that's okay. Redirects, they happen. You know, you shouldn't get too obsessed by these. If you've got 2.6 million, or if you've got 50,000, almost certainly you've got a faceted search on your internal search. So you can say, oh, filter it by year or type of service or something like that. You haven't closed that off from Googlebot, so it's trying to crawl every different way through that. There'll be other stuff as well. There might be old content, all this kind of stuff. But this is where you look for those kind of issues. And also, it's quite handy. You've got a nice page speed report as well. Agile site doesn't get enough traffic to have this. All council sites will. So that's kind of the first port of call. Rattle through. So the stuff I guess you most care about. On-page optimization. I could have color-coded this. On the left, very briefly and in summary, are kind of main things to look at in terms of search engine optimization. URL, page title, meta title and description, the internal linking, especially if it's descriptive and contextual. So rather than read more, find out library opening times this Christmas would be the link, etc. Concise factual summaries on the pages, properly formatted snippets with headings that got tables and lists and so forth, image alt text that supports it, multimedia, etc. Shouldn't put that for AI. Well, for AI overview, because that will pull it in from the search results. And over here is some more that are kind of on the right-hand side, AEO specific. So again, and we'll look at this in more detail, you need to lead with concise, easily quoted factual statements. These AEOs are not spending much time on your page looking for an answer. If at the top of the page it says, here's an answer, ideally, like the architecture of the page is answer and then detail and then more detail. So like the old inverted pyramid. That helps. Content that mirrors how people ask questions. All of these LLMs are built on question and answer. That's how they're trained. That's how they're built. They love question and answer. They're providing answers to people's questions. So in terms of the structure of your content, you want to be answering questions. You want to be answering questions for specific audiences, in fact, ideally. That's the gold standard, right? I mean, that works for search engines as well. For LLMs, it's absolutely essential. They like structured data. Again, they see structured data on a page. They go, oh, this is where I'm going to find my answer. Don't have to wade through all these paragraphs. Have them. So particularly relevant to council sites, Q&A, of course, FAQ and how to. So like step by steps would go under how to, I guess. So that would be served using JSON or something like that in the back end. I think there's a Drupal structured data module. I don't know if it's part of LGD distribution. Natural language, varied but clear phrasing, more so than with SEO. LLMs seem to pick up a great deal more on conversational language. Now they'll deal with different types of language, particularly depending on the topic and you know, is this something that's kind of a government answering question? Okay, it can be less conversational. Does seem to prefer it in terms of deciding what to serve back as results. Then contextual clarity. So this is something AI is quite bad at, right? Still. So is a bank a financial institution or part of a river? That's what I mean by contextual clarity. So it can understand. Again, you think about how it's looking at the page. It's basically trying to look at it for an answer. So in each section, rather than assuming that somebody has read the entire page before that section, you make the context clear again for an LLM. I'll try and think this out. Well, I'm going to show you a couple of examples about good and bad content optimization on a couple of council web pages. So maybe it will become a bit clearer there. LLMs also look for supporting information. So text, I mean, they basically read web pages purely as text. They're also looking for multimedia, which might be on or not on the same page, video, etc. We'll be looking again for social references and so forth. It's a bit complicated to get into, but again, multimedia can be quite important, not essential, and it depends how competitive the term is. But so looking specifically at LLMs again, I mean, if I had to give someone a core kind of way of doing it, LLMs would typically take one to three sentences from your source in order to use it for its answer. So as I was saying, begin each topic or even paragraph if it's really long with context and direct answer, and then you can expand on it. So it's about putting the information up front, which generally most well-designed council pages do it. It's not like you're trying to get people to fill in a form first or keep them on the page for a length of time or go and move them around the site like you would in a commercial setting. There's no reason not to, particularly light bullet points, numbered lists, schema, step-by-step how-to FAQ schema. It likes concrete information. We'll talk about curating that a bit. Stats and numbers and references to sources. It saves it time. Like, oh, this is well referenced. Okay, great. It absolutely loves Q&A schema because that's what it's trained on. So you can format different things as Q&A or FAQ or what have you, but the schema behind it is called that. So I'm going to show you some good and bad. I picked these random. These are two council web pages that talk about the same subject. One of them is LGD and one of them's not. And actually, the bad example is the one that's LGD. So that's just, sorry, Erin and Tim. So the first one I'm going to show, it's got really good on-page optimization, this. They're both about household support fund. So what have we got? We've got this thing at the top here, which are like jump links, shows you what's on the page. Cost of living support. So we understand, blah, blah, blah. Visit this page for this specific stuff. Visit this for this specific stuff. Very specific, talks about what the household support fund is, when you can apply, when it will end. Links off to the Gov UK website. A couple of bullet points. Strong use of subheadings, even if to the human eye the layout's a bit weird, because those should be lower. The holiday voucher scheme offers house, so it explains straight under the heading what it is. Again, financial award explains what it is. Lots of bullet points. Eligibility, households are eligibility. So it doesn't assume context from reading the rest of the page. It's got tables, quite likes tables as well as bullet points. Then it's got a very specific how to apply, and again, context, and like very clear instructions, clearly written button, what happens, more criteria. Partner links, again, which kind of suggests authority and trust. Privacy notice, fraud statement. So clear H1, topic focus, concise plain English summary, logical question-like structure, structured detail, explicit dates, states when changes will happen, how to apply, good reliability signals. So even like here in the breadcrumb, it's quite nicely, it's clear where in the path folder structure it lives. Links back to Gov UK. Doesn't use FAQ schema. It'd be even better if it did that. Let's take example number 2. Rutland. So same thing, blah, blah, funded by UK government. Everything in one section. Complete the application form to apply. Application form, link to policy, da, da, da. In actual fact, this wouldn't come up on an LLM. What would come up is a PDF, which might be this. Yeah, that's a PDF, because that's actually got loads of information in it. So the PDF is more likely to rank. So if we have a look at this, bad optimization, bad, naughty. No clear summary, no structured tables, minimum detail, no FAQ style structure. So why is that bad? It forces the LLM to do extra work. It's got to fetch a PDF, read through it, etc. It might not even take the time. Benefits and support. Like everything's more difficult for the LLM doing this. Another thing you can do is topic optimization. One topic per page is always good. It's good for SEOs, but you can still break that up into pages. But in terms of what to talk about, like if you've got FAQ from service teams, I'd use an LLM to refine those into actual questions to answer. And depending on how much you trust your service teams to give you stuff verbatim. And then you can also use an LLM to find common questions about a topic. So I use prompts all the time in my research. So for example, I would ask ChatGPT to do this, provide conversational situational queries associated with X that real people in the UK would ask an LLM, group them into logical subcategories. Things like that. You can refine this kind of stuff. You will get a load of really good questions and answers that you can use to answer, even if it's to dump into an FAQ at the bottom of the page. Content curation. I realize I need to hurry up, Aaron. LLMs hate conflicting information. They're incredibly sensitive to it, particularly so if it's on a single site, right? Council sites have authority, so it should use you rather than some random Facebook post someone made 3 years ago, right? But sometimes mental health pages, having worked with a few councils, it's not uncommon, for example, to have that information scattered onto 5 or 6 services. Do they all correlate? Are they all saying the same thing for specific questions? That's probably the most difficult thing to do, I would imagine, like as a content designer, content editor. Recency of pages and documents is a big indicator that LLMs use to how reliable they are. So core pages, like the stuff you really want people not to get misinformation about, or that are very heavily used, need updating. Even if it's a small update and update the date on it, do it. If things have changed, it can be really useful to say, as of June 25, this changed, because the LLM will compare it to maybe a document or another page that's saying, this is the information. If it can see this, it can then check and see if that page was before June 2025. And it'll go, that was, therefore this page has got the recent information, I'll use it. So it's like, give them a hand. So this is ChatGPT. Like in terms of reliability and recency, it's not a one size fits all. So this is specifically, I asked it about council sites and Gemini as well, but I'll use this one. So, stuff that can stay reliable, laws and processes that haven't changed, heritage, conservation, data, geographical information, where's things you would expect. Things it would expect. So it's a bit wary of. It go out of date quite quickly. Housing policies, adult social care policies, financial data, contact detail, job roles, service hours, consultation information, and things that are unreliable as soon as the law changes because it expects the law to change them. So it will treat different types of content, different subjects differently. Not super helpful. Like, going, oh, great, I need to review all my content every now and then. But the service teams probably do need to be reviewing things faster than they would like to. There was a question from Willa specifically, I think it was Southwark Council, and there's an old PDF coming up. How do you find out all your old PDFs and docs? Because it's a bit more difficult than things depending on whether usually they're not in the sitemap and You can, do a search on Google, just include URL, just include PDFs, and it'll bring them all up. Then you've got pages of search results to get through. Search Console's not very reliable. But here's an LLM prompt you could use. Search comprehensively, tell it to work hard, think hard and stuff. Get it to pull a list of all of your PDFs. I would use a tool like Screaming Frog, SEMrush and stuff. Maybe, what you've got in a Drupal, this, web search as well, to actually make sure I've got everything. Screaming Frog, for example, will only pull stuff that's still linked to from internally in your site. Whereas if it's still another site linking to it and you've forgotten it exists, an LLM will still find it. And then get it to analyze the ones it considers old or unreliable and tell you why. So get them to do this work for you. So, these are typical reasons why it will consider something unreliable. If it's like an approved planning policy, it thinks it's more reliable than consultancy responses. Look, different subjects have different lifespans. It might be dated. It might be clearly archived or have an old council logo on it. It's not dumb, but it does need help. You can use that to get rid of stuff. Quickly, how are they interacting with your site? So number one, you can use a user log file analysis. You get this from your server admin, get it off your server. You use a log file analysis tool, and it will show you how bots are crawling your site, which bots, how often, which pages. So this is just like a really low traffic site I picked using SEMrush log file analyzer. I think there are free tools, maybe not. So I can see, ChatGPT user. Okay, that's interesting. Whereas ChatGPT bot. So these are different things. They're doing different things. One is updating its GTP dot is updating its training materials, and this is from a search, perplexity, and so forth. And you can break it down which pages they're looking at. um, how often, whoops, call frequencies and stuff like that. So you can get a sense of what they're doing. What you want is a lot of them use indexing your site frequently, actually. So it's collecting recent information. It'll also show you which queries, which pages are being used, looked at to answer queries. And I would use Google Analytics. So again, I don't this won't be an analytics lesson. Typically, there's nothing here about AI tools. You'd have to go to source medium and it will always be under referral. So we've got like referral here, chatgpt.com. I always set up a new channel grouping, it's called. That includes AI tools as a specific channel. And then you can use that to look at what landing pages they're coming on, etc. If you know your way around Google Analytics, brilliant. If not, probably find some help. I would also look at my organic search landing pages because there's going to be correlation there between what's appearing in the AI overview. And make sure that, those are your key pages anyway, right? In terms of tracking stuff, there are loads of very expensive paid options now. I use one called Rank Scale. Sorry, again, I'll just very quickly show you that. So something like this, it will tell me for a particular domain, and I'll give it specific queries to track in multiple LLMs. ChatGPT and Perplexity or AI overview, whatever, and it will tell me how often it's cited and the visibility and so forth. And maybe update that every month. The problem, with that is if you're asking a tool to do like 100 different terms across 3 different channels, it ends up being really expensive. Hundreds of pounds a month you could spend on that. It's probably not worth it. It might be worth it just initially to use some core terms and see if you are doing okay on AI overview, for example, for them. Or if you do some before and after work. Does this work? Great, we'll roll it to other pages. And if you want to find terms to track, you can look at your Search Console data for your organic search terms. You can ask LLMs again, like this exact same prompt. What do people search for around my bin collections or fostering or council tax in Manchester? And then answer those and then actually track whether you're not being asked for them. I wanted to take away a lot of stuff being talked about AEO is wrong. So there's lots and lots of guides to how to do this. Or it's peripheral, like it will only make very minor changes. You can LLMS text I haven't talked about. It's what a lot of people suggest using technical optimization. It's basically like a sitemap with loads more information that these bots can use. There's no proof that this works. To do it properly might take quite a lot of resource, and it will conflict with your sitemap if they have different information in. So at the moment, recommendations don't do it, or try it. Like that, it could take you down dead end. It's like Google's old mobile first stuff. Let's serve all our sites in basic HTML so mobile phones can read them. It's nonsense. What you need is a technically solid, quick site, good information architecture, content curation, well-structured, well-written content based around topics, with each topic having context. And then your key pages, like the most important information or you optimize those. Metadata, like summaries, the conversational type, speech, and schema. The end.
That was fantastic, Michael. Thank you. I know that was such a marathon to get through, and there's loads more you could have gone into. So well done for finding the way through quite a dense topic where we could have dived down any one of a number of, not rabbit holes, but topic areas. Um, there's a few questions, lots of claps. Look at that. That's very nice. I wanted to start with a question about, you mentioned schema quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could just explain what you mean by that. You were talking about FAQ schema. And then I'm going to just bring in, I think, Louise and James around the sort of FAQs format, because I think that's probably something that content designers don't go for particular reasons. Maybe Louise and James, you can come in and sort of we'll do that. But could you explain the sort of that technical term in this context?
Yeah, sorry.
All
Um,
right.
so meta schema. There's even a website for it, schema.org. So this is like a web standard that's used by everything. And it provides extra information in the code, so not on the visible page, about what this page or site is about. So a lot of you will be using it within the meta tag module for saying the name of your organization, maybe the name of the author of a page or something like that. Potentially, is it a blog? Is it an article? Things very basic. Um, if you've got like an FAQ section, you can use it inline. I mean, there's probably people like Mark here who are better to speak to this, or typically use JSON code. So effectively, what you do is you present all this, but wrapped in code within the code, which has actually got the questions and answers, makes it very explicit to the um, crawler, so it can look at that and goes, these are the questions and the answers on this page, but it's not visible to the user. And there is a Drupal module for this. I haven't used it, so I don't know how well it works, and I don't know if it's part of the distribution.
Mhm. Cool. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so I just wanted to set that context, I guess, for people. Um, James and Louise, if you're able to come off mic, otherwise I can ask for you, but you were asking around this sort of Q&As, FAQs, sort of topic. I don't know if I can see you anywhere.
Yeah, I'll start,
Yeah,
and then James
go
can
for
jump
it.
in. So we tend to follow gov.uk GDS advice on not to use FAQs for reasons that they're harder to scan because you've got lots of sentences that start what, how, and they're not front loaded headings in the way that we would normally do it. So we were wondering if there is a way to present information in a sort of that will be picked up as an FAQ, but it's not written as a set of FAQs on a page.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up about it for a start. I mean, if it's really well structured, you might get away with it. What I tend to do with commercial clients is I dump an FAQ section at the end of the page. It's quick answer. So I will actually take what I've written and which people have probably already read, and I will turn it into an FAQ section almost specifically for LLMs. That's at the bottom of the page. Other things, I don't know. I mean, you could experiment. I would
Okay.
say. I mean, I'd be more tempted maybe to with council stuff is to use how to. Obviously, it depends on the context. Um, don't know. I'd have to go and think about it and look at some specific examples, I think.
Yeah, because we have on LocalGov Drupal, we have guide pages, we have step by steps, which do some of that work. And I'm wondering how much, really good use of headings and subheadings would help with a lot of that.
Well, it helps a lot, and it also helps specifically with organic search as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be
I I,
great
th
to look
I
a
think I
bit
would
more.
look at it if the page looks like it's a problem. So again, I would look at like what are my pages being crawled? Am I getting referrals to these pages from LLMs?
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Look to see if there's a problem and then look for a solution rather than solving things that might not be a problem.
Yeah. But yeah, you don't want to try shoehorning FAQ into something where it's incongruous, for sure. Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's great. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Louise. Good question. Thanks for that. There was a question just before that about microsites from Oliver. Oliver, again, if you want to come off mute. You're welcome to ask us a while ago. You were talking about this sort of strong argument for rationalizing the amount of microsites. I think it was to do with not having two forms of the same content potentially. Is that right, Mike, Oliver? I don't know if you're here. Just check. Is Oliver still on? Not obviously to me. So I think, Michael, the question that Oliver was asking was, he says, this feels like a strong argument for rationalizing the amount of microsites, especially where the information on them is outside the digital team's control. And I think the context there was about like not having two forms of the same information, but
Yeah, I mean, it's always,
so.
I mean, when talking to service teams about that, it's like it's just another argument, isn't it? It's like, okay, you can have your microsite, but don't blame us if you get loads of wrong answers about your service coming up in AI, in LLMs.
Because you're serving two forms, it might be existing somewhere else on the main site.
Yeah.
It's sort of duplicating content. Mhm.
I mean, I mean, it's always a risk.
Yeah. Will was asking, does Google recognize that AI overview has these problems around context, authority, and recency?
I think it must do, yes.
I mean, they're not silly, are they?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't fix it, people are going to stop using Google search.
Hmm. They're just going to find it really annoying and go elsewhere.
I mean, like if the top of the page is all adverts and wrong answers.
Mm. Yeah. Sam at Southwark is so we've got PDF question. We have
Yeah.
the obligatory PDF question. Do PDFs rank highly for LLMs, or like or is it to do with the what you were talking about in terms of how they search and that kind of thing? Does it see a
Yeah. I
difference
mean,
between a web page and a PDF, or?
so it's kind of like if we think of the two-step thing, when it does its initial search to find what page sites or documents it might go and then look for information. Generally, for most topics, pages will rank higher in right, or the search API will pull more pages than PDFs. But in terms of it as content, it doesn't care particularly. So there's some examples in there. I'm sure we'll share the deck where it would rather look at a web page than a PDF because it knows it's more likely to get reliable information, but otherwise not. And it's absolutely typical for council sites and many other sites. Particularly council sites, you're going to have loads of your organic search traffic is coming to PDFs. And that's why PDFs shouldn't exist. is one of the reasons.
One
And
of the
also
many
it's
reasons.
hidden and it's hard to keep on track about how up to date they are, etc.
Yeah.
But no, I mean LLMs they're not going to differentiate in the main between them.
Mhm.
Particularly if the PDF's got nicely laid out bullet points in a table or something.
Mhm. Okay, got it. Does anybody else have any questions that they just want to jump off mute and just ask their question? Let me make sure if anyone else has got any. I think I've covered what people were asking.
I've I've got a quick question. Can you hear me? Because I've got my
Yeah,
earpods in.
Yeah.
you've got
Hi,
any? Yeah.
thanks for the presentation. It was amazing. I work at Southwark as well. First of all, I think it's really interesting that we're even talking about optimizing content for large language models. It's just really interesting that we're in that state of affairs. And it almost feels like we have to treat content as data in a way for AI to understand and synthesize. There's almost like a shift in how we approach our content going forward. And it's almost like the LLM is like another user that we have to think about in terms of our content, which I found an interesting observation. But I just had a question about um, searches that people use when they start their user journey. You're saying that you predict that it's going to become more conversational questions and longer questions that people are asking. I mean, do you see that as a definite shift in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's already starting. It's just because I mean, it's absolutely, you can see it with the like teenagers already, because they're used to, I mean, that's how they're used to finding out information. I just want to pick up because it's really interesting what you said before. So to me, as an SEO, it's already like page content is already that search, organic search engines are a user. And it's almost like that's getting better from a content point of view with LLMs, because they're happier with, like, they're less concerned about the technical baggage around a page compared to like conversational answers for specific audiences. And I think in a lot of ways you might end up with more pages. But in some ways it frees you to produce better content than search optimized content. Obviously, if you haven't been, because councils haven't had to do it much, it's kind of new for you. So yeah, we will see. So we will see more long tail search terms, as we call it. I forget what percentage of daily Google searches are completely unique. Never happened before, rather. Like, it's really high. It's some crazy, like 15, 20%. So how people frame questions is already quite unique, but we're starting to see them get longer. It doesn't necessarily mean that the LLM is then going to split that into very different questions in terms of how it goes off and finds which sites to get information from, though, because it's probably already splitting it into very specific sets of questions.
Thank you.
Great question, Eve. I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Michael. This was brilliant. And I think this is probably the start, because there's a lot where we could go with this, and we're sort of having those conversations, aren't we, around what more we can do. So for attendees, there's a feedback email that's going out. If you want to share like where you would like to go more and explore more on this topic, then that would be really helpful to sort of get your feedback via the feedback email, which you've already got, and someone's already filled in the feedback, which is very nice of you. Thank you. So thank you again, Michael. I think we can give Michael a digital virtual round of applause, or we can just come off and mic. But thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know you put a lot of work into this talk, and it was quite an interesting topic that you kind of obviously you work in day to day. But thank you for putting the time in and coming and sharing your wonderful knowledge and expertise.
Pleasure. Thank you, Aaron. Anytime.